Remember when life was simpler and problems were solvable? When you could rely on good common sense and your own honesty and initiative to see you through? That was back before government regulation got so tangled up in our public and private lives, before paperwork and arbitrary rules took over and individual choice was locked out. The National Endowment for Liberty believes that most of our problems cannot be solved by government, that too much government is in itself a problem, not a solution. These programs are made possible as a public service by people who believe that moral and political rights go hand in hand with economic freedom. Write to us at Post Office Box 580099, Houston, Texas 77058. Or call us at 1-800-333-3545 and ask for extension 909. We are the National Endowment for Liberty. Liberty can set you free.
This is the best country in the world. We still should keep an eye on these things and try and stop the abuses, because if you don't, that's how people like Hitler and things like that come to being.
Each week on At Issue, we show the probe report you've just seen to a randomly selected group of citizens somewhere in the United States. What you're watching now is actual footage of the unrehearsed reactions of a group of people in Phoenix, Arizona to the probe report, the IRS and Taxpayers' Rights.
And it looks like to me it's going to have to come from the people because of the Congress and the deficit.
What is it that the IRS does best?
They love to confuse you. They'll send you paperwork, and you look at it and you go, what is that?
Do best? Oh, I'd say they're persistent, they're tenacious, they'll do anything to get what they want.
They can take your salary, they can put you in jail, they can release you at their own discretion.
They are not gracious and friendly when you walk in there, or helpful. If they say you owe so much, you have to sit there and prove that you do not owe it to them. In other words, and sometimes it's like talking to that wall.
That lady who was thrown out of her car,
That was the one that comes to my mind.
she exhibited some backbone. The only thing is that one person can't fight the system and a group of men. That woman was powerless to defend herself. And had she tried to defend herself physically, she would have been beaten into oblivion.
What do you think of that Taxpayers' Bill of Rights? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? Is it enough, not enough?
I just don't think it's enough.
It's a good thing, but it's not enough.
It's a start. It's a start, but it's really not that much.
I am still not able to compete with the IRS on equal footing.
But they could literally come in and take everything you own, close it all personal property. And I think this is important that people stop trying to be afraid. It's hard not to be afraid.
Yeah, the bigger the government, the more money, the more power.
I think the IRS is killing our country. I mean, literally killing us, because if we ever make a lot of money, all we want to do is tell nobody about it, hide it away, because we know if the IRS finds out, they're going to take it.
I would like to see the IRS abolished. I don't think that, I would like to see something else in its place.
Ruthless taxation has been the downfall of many countries.
What's going on now is what the first revolution was about. It's not impossible for another one to come up.
They don't mince words, do they? Well, let's hear what two real experts have to say about it. Our special guest today is Dr. Walter Williams, a nationally syndicated columnist and professor of economics at George Mason University. And our host and resident expert is the chairman of the National Endowment for Liberty, Ron Paul. Ron, there seems to be a lot of anger in those people.
Boy, I don't think there's any doubt about it. And from my experience traveling around the country, I have met a lot of angry people, a lot of people who are very upset. They're upset with the taxes they pay. They're upset with the Internal Revenue Service. They're upset with the tactics. And I'm just wondering whether, from your experience, Dr. Williams, whether you've come across this same situation.
I've come across the same thing, but it really gives a lot of meaning to what Benjamin Franklin said after he left the Constitutional Convention in 1787. He said, when the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the Republic. Now, what I mean by that is that, of course, there's a need for government. Of course, there's a need for taxes. But government should be doing those kind of things that are legitimate functions of government, namely protecting you and I from international thugs taking our property, from domestic thugs taking our property, and maybe it shouldn't be involved with the adjudication of disputes. But government has gone beyond its legitimate functions. It has engaged in immoral behavior, namely 2/3 of our budget represents acts where the government confiscates the property of one American and gives it to another American to whom it does not belong. And this is why we can't but avoid such a horrendous tax system that we have now.
You know, Frank Chatteroff wrote that we've had two revolutions in this country. One, our original revolution, which was opposed to high taxation. And he said the other revolution literally occurred in 1913 with the institution of the income tax. Do you think that's significant?
Yes, I do. Matter of fact, I think that the 1913 amendment it's typical of what Congress does to us. They start out small, and then they get very, very big. Matter of fact, I think the withholding tax was only to be a temporary tax, the so-called victory tax during World War II. And I think that surely the tax code, making the tax code a part of the Constitution, was a very, very significant change. It was a revolution that confiscates private property. It makes us serfs in our own country.
That is right, and it seems like one feeds on itself. Government was not huge in 1913 and 1914, but once we as a people endorsed this concept that government could take this revenue, it seems like the politicians had no problems in figuring out what type of largesse they could pass out, and it looked like the people were rather receptive. So is the basic problem a problem with the politicians, or is the basic problem with the American people who are saying, you know, we want more things?
It's a problem with the American people. That is, first of all, the IRS is doing what Congress wants the IRS to do. Congressmen are doing what voters send them to Washington to do. That is, congressmen and senators are voted into office because they promise their constituents that they will use the power of their office to confiscate the property of one American and bring it back to them, either in terms of aid to higher education, highway funds, catastrophic health care, and all kinds of programs. So it's a congressman running on a platform of not doing that. That is, if he said to his constituents, I'm not going to use my office to bring you back money, somebody else's money, he would not get elected to office. So it's we the people who are to blame. That is, each of us think that our particular program is very, very important, but everybody thinks that their particular program is important. And if Congress does what we all want it to do, we're going to wind up with something that nobody wants, and the people on the show showed that the thing that we're winding up that nobody wants is an oppressive IRS.
On occasion, I've taken the position, quite frankly, I don't believe we need the income tax, and we don't need the Internal Revenue Service. But as an economist, what's your reaction? Do you think that we would get into economic problems if the government wasn't there to do certain things to benefit the economy, or could we make it without that tax?
Oh my goodness! I don't have to really give an answer to that question. That is, we have existed as a nation from 1776 up until 1913 without an income tax. And we became the most powerful and richest nation on the face of the earth during that period. So obviously it was not necessary. Many things that government's doing now are not necessarily. You know, if you look at the problems of the homeless, well, we've been a nation from 1776, 174 years, up until we had HUD was put into office, and there weren't homeless people. Now all of a sudden, as a result of HUD, now we have homeless people. If you look at area after area where government has intruded, the problem has become worse rather than better.
Well, the liberal would come back and say, you're unconcerned, you don't care about the poor people, you don't want to help the people with houses, and you don't think we should tax people and put money into HUD?
Well, if I were a poor person today concerned with housing, I would pray to God that HUD would be abolished. That is,
totally and completely.
Totally and completely. That is, HUD has in fact destroyed far more housing than it has created. But getting back to the issue of the program is that we have big government, and in order to finance big government, you're going to have oppressive taxes. And what Americans have to ask from their government is to have less government. Let me be free to keep my own paycheck. Let the people find their own solutions to their own problems.
Well, don't you think the deficit contributes to this? I mean, if we were balancing our budget, there might be less incentive for the IRS agent to be so ruthless. So as the deficit skyrocket, do you think this puts more emphasis on the IRS agent to collect more?
I think it's just